It gives me great pleasure to welcome Scott Adams to this panel. He's the founder of Adventureland International and author of countless best-selling text adventure games. Today's panel deals with the past, but to the journey to today. Please, a round of applause for Scott Adams from Free Play, Florida.
I am very happy to be able to talk today. I'm going to be discussing past, present, and future. And I will have a question and answer session at the end. And also, I plan to be here all day. And if anybody wants to talk to me, please feel free to connect. I love chatting with folks and reminiscing and talking about things of the future. I've also got an interesting announcement today. I've picked Free Play Florida as the place that I'm going to make the official announcement. So you're all going to be the first to hear this. Actually, the other company that I'm involved with isn't making their announcement until tomorrow. So you guys literally are on the forefront of this. For those who remember what I used to do, that picture on the left was an ad. The picture on the right was something I did just recently, and I'll get into these in greater detail as we go. But first, I would like, my family is here, if they could just stand up for a moment and wave to everybody. God's story, that was then. We're going to go back a little ways, just so you can see my progression. Religiously, and you're going to wonder why is that important, and it is part of my life's journey. I was basically an atheist, but I was raised Jewish, but it was more cultural Judaism for me. I never had a connection with God. It was an interesting past. So my Jewish background, I learned a lot and I appreciate a lot from it. In my teenage years, I'll back up just a fraction. In elementary school, our school went on a field trip to University of Miami. I was in North Miami Beach at the time, not far from the University of Miami, and we got to see the computer science department. And this was in probably around 1961, 1962, in that time frame. And they had the mainframe computers. Obviously, home computers, personal computers didn't exist at the time. And they actually had a tour area where you could go, they'd take the school kids through and you could see it, and there was a big glass wall. And on the other side was all the winking and blinking lights and the tape drives going, and I'm sure you've all seen pictures of the mainframes of the era. And to me, it was like, wow, I want to go in there. And I actually said that, I want to go in there. They said, no, you can't go in there. And it was like I purposed in my heart then, I'm going to get in there. I'm heading in there someday. I had a love for computers. In 1970, I was going to high school in North Miami Beach. It was, the name of the school is North Miami High, senior high. I was in 11th grade. I was accepted for early admission to University of Miami. My mom said, you're going to be a doctor. I went, okay. She had already determined that. Over that summer, I basically decided I wasn't ready to go to college yet. I really wanted to go to my senior year. And I actually was able to convince my mom that I didn't want to go, and that was no mean feat, trust me. So I went to my senior year and it changed my life. The reason that happened was that was the year the state of Florida decided they were going to do an experiment and give kids an opportunity to be exposed to computer technology. They picked that high school, North Miami Senior High, to get a terminal to connect with the mainframes down at the University of Miami. And this terminal wasn't what you think of today, a screen and a keyboard. This was much, much earlier. This was this electric typewriter with an audio modem that ran at 300 baud and a telephone line. And the typewriter, as you typed, you had a box of printer paper behind it, and it would literally run up through it. So it was basically you could type, and the input would come back as typed text. The language I was using was called APL. Has anyone ever heard of that language? Okay, there are people out here that remember it. This derivative was called APL 360 because it was designed to run in an IBM 360. APL is a very interesting computer language. I don't recommend it for beginning programmers. It's really all Greek, literally. Most of the symbols in it are borrowed from the Greek alphabet. You look at it, you're not programming in English, you're using Greek symbols. You're not writing with Greek words, you're just using the symbols. And that was how the language was written. Okay, I've got access because I came in, it's in the computer science department. Oh, sorry, computer science, what am I saying? It was in the Math Resource Center. There's no such thing as a computer science department. I saw this and I said, what can we do? Can we use this? And they said, yeah, anyone can use it. There's a sign-up sheet. You can take a block of time. I think we're allowed a half hour at a time. And you can do whatever you want with it. I said, what does it do? We said, and the teachers literally said, we don't know. I bought from University of Miami, I remember buying the manual for it, and I think, remembering correctly, it cost me $10. That was a big deal in 1969. I think I was working as a car hop at the time for tips, but I used my tip money. I bought a manual to learn what this APL 360 was. I read it and I've got an idea what this will do. So my first program was sort of a Hello World type program. I just got the game to say, the computer to say, I wrote a program that says, okay, what is your name? My name is Scott, and it would say, hi, Scott. You know, not real deep. Then I thought, okay, what do I want to do moving forward? And then I got this ambitious project. I'm going to drop back in history a little bit to the World's Fair in 1965, somewhere in that time frame. Anybody go to the World's Fair in New York? Remember that? Okay. This was a big deal. It took place in Flushing Meadow up there in New York. I was about 13 years old at the time, and one of the exhibits that I remember just stuck in my mind was the IBM Pavilion. They had a giant ball. You would literally sit down in a stadium area and they would rise up. Picture like the Epcot ball, but this was IBM. This was their presentation. You went inside, there's a multimedia presentation about computers. They exited you out, you went through an area. And the thing that stuck in my mind was there was a place where you could play a game against the computer. And it was tic-tac-toe. And they had a big sign up there, you can make your moves, pick where you wanted to go, and next to it were two lighted signs that you'd light up. One said, computer wins, the other says tie. It got to be my turn to go up there, and I says, well, where is the I win sign?
Yeah.
They said, the computer never loses. I went, no. I had no idea that you could play a game of tic-tac-toe and never lose. I played the game, and that stuck in my mind. So here I am, 5 years later. What's the first thing I'm going to write in this new computer? I wanted to write a tic-tac-toe program. So I went home and started writing the game from scratch on paper. I'd come in and enter in the computer, work on it. It got to be where I got permission from the school that they would allow me to come in at like 6 a.m. in the morning when the janitors were there. I had permission to knock on the door. They'd let me in. I'd go use the computer before school. Then after school, I got permission to be locked in alone in the school with the computer. And I would stay till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night working on the game, and I finally got it running. I actually saved the printout for that game, and it's part of a collection that I donated to the Strong Museum out in Rochester. So they've got that artifact, which is kind of interesting. But it was just tremendous fun. I loved computers. I loved gaming. I always loved board games and such growing up. So I discovered my gift. I did not go to University of Miami to become a doctor. I did go to what was called Florida Institute of Technology at the time, FIT. They're now known, I believe, as Florida Tech up in Melbourne. The time I went, Jerome Cooper was still the founding president. He was still running it, and it was the only fully accredited college in the United States to still have its founding president. And they were there to serve the tech industry. The Cape was very big at the time, and his vision was to start that school. So that's where I went to college. Okay. The age of personal computers came along. The TRS-80 was my first appliance computer. Not my first home computer, my first appliance computer. One that was ready to run out of the box. Before that, I had actually built a computer. I don't have the slide up here. It was called a sphere, as in a round globe. And it advertised in radio electronics, I believe, with a tiny little ad in the back. This company put together, it was a kit computer. You had to build it, but it was a fully functional computer. It was something like this, where you had a keyboard, you had a screen involved. I think it sold for $850. It had a couple of K of memory, 256 bytes of ROM. This wasn't a super powerful thing. It was it was either a Z80 or an 8080 processor. I think it might have been Z80. Anyway, I got it built, got it running. It was a text-only machine. One of the things I did was I literally invented a graphics card for it, because it did have a backplane that cards could be plugged into. So using 2102 chips, which are 1K by 1 bit, I made a 16K board. Graphics that would then drive the screen, just bitmap monochrome graphics. And then the next thing I did was I wrote a game. And the game was Tank War. It was a flat screen where you had little tanks that ran across the screen. It was set up for 2 players. I made controllers for each player, which was basically a box with 2 rods coming out. You'd use one hand on each rod, and you could push it both forward, you'd go forward, both back, you'd go back. One forward, one back, you'd either go right or left. And at the top of one of the rods I had, there was a button, and you could fire. And I made 2 of these, and I wrote the game, and so you could play Tank War, 2 people. And it worked, and it was great fun. About that time, Sphere came out with a question, what are you using your Sphere for? Contest, their first annual. So I submitted the game, and lo and behold, I won first prize, which was kind of neat. And when I got the letter, it was really neat because it was written by the founder of the company. I think it was Michael Weiss. And in it, he said, one of the things that they noted was I was their very first order of this computer. Wow. So I had a special place in their heart, and they were kind of neat to see what happened. Unfortunately, Sphere has long since long gone. My original computer was actually bought by a collector sometime in the 70s. I have no idea what happened to it, but I hope it's still out there and still functional. It was kind of neat, but I had a lot of fun. So anyway, along came the TRS-80, and that's when Adventure International began. And that was my claim to fame back then. Was I had a 16K model, level 2. It was called level 2 because there was a level 1 that only had 4K, and this had Microsoft Basic in it. Thank you. One moment. And Microsoft Basic at the time was not a given. This was a tiny little company. Bill Gates was unknown. He had done some other Microsofts. So him getting Microsoft Basic into the Radio Shack was also one of the leg up that his company used. But for me, it was also very important because it was an interesting language. I had never worked in BASIC before. I'd always done assembler. And so, assembler or Fortran. Basic beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code was designed by Dartmouth College to allow people to get a handle on writing computers. It was a higher language. And it had a feature in it that really struck me as interesting called strings. Any programmers out here? Quite a few. Okay. So strings we take for granted today. Strings are the ability to put human English words in a program so that they can be used and displayed and easily manipulated. And I thought, this is really cool. Wow, I think I'd like to write a game that needs strings. Don't need strings in tic-tac-toe. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. I was working at Stromberg Carlson in Lake Mary, not far from here. And in the IT department, they got a game that I heard about, and it was called Adventure by Crothers and Woods. The original Crothers and Woods adventure game running on a mainframe. When I heard about it, I would come in early in the morning before work and play it, and I'd stay late in the afternoon and play it after work. It took me a week to solve it, and I thought it was really neat, and I told everybody, I think I'm going to write a game like this for my TRS-80. And they laughed. They said, this is a mainframe program running in a very large memory space that you don't have a chance of getting it to work. So, of course, there was also a challenge there. Adventure International was born from Adventureland. This is a shot of one of the early buildings that we had up here, the dome. And it may even still be in place up in Longwood. Are there any people here from those early days? Would you mind standing up?
Wow.
Say hi. It is wonderful to see you guys again. Unfortunately, Brian couldn't be here. Brian Jones, who is the host here, and he was also back from that era too. And I'm sorry he just couldn't make it right now.
Some frozen.
It was interesting. Here I was publishing games, and one of the things that I did when I was publishing them was I didn't know what I was doing. I was a programmer, I was creative, I wasn't a businessman. And I started off in the back of, I think, Softside magazine, or one of them, with just a simple ad, adventure games, $14.95, and I got some orders. I showed it at local computer shows in the area. I got some orders. And then one day, I got a phone call from somebody that said, I'd like to buy 50 of your games.
Wow.
Ooh, okay. Well, let's see, 50 times $15 is going to be, no, you don't understand. I'm going to resell these. I want a wholesale price. And I said, what's a wholesale price? Literally, I had no idea. He had to explain it to me. Oh, you give a discount to dealers. Okay, that makes sense. You're buying a lot, you get a discount, you resell it. He was my first dealer. Name was Manny Garcia. I remember it well. He had a TRS-80 Radio Shack in a far-off distant land of Chicago. I'd never been there, but I had heard of it. He bought many more over the years. But the interesting thing was, it took me all weekend to make these 50 cassette tapes, because this was on a TRS-80 Model 1. Sent it up to him, and then get a phone call back, and he says, okay, we got the tapes. Good. And then he said something really strange. He says, where's the packaging? Oops. Okay, hadn't even thought about that. I wasn't even thinking retail. At the time, I had a baby daughter, and she was on formula. And using, they had something back then that were little formula bags that you'd put into a plastic container. And this then became the basis for the packaging. The bags literally were just the perfect size to get a cassette in, printed a business card that went over the top, and that was where the packaging began. It grew. Sales started to pick up. It got to be such that this ad was not something I did. This was somebody else did it. They said, "Oh, we hear you're using our software. Would you mind promoting it?" I said, "Yeah, sure. I like it. It's really good software." So they used my image. And because my image was this and it was in the magazine, it was sort of self-serving. Orders picked up for my stuff. It was kind of interesting. They say there's no such thing as bad advertising. I'm the one on the left. Yeah. I call him Igor. This is a picture that was in my limited gold series, which was very popular. This was later on. The first 12, I think, games were in the package, and I had a signed autograph picture that went along, and it was a lot of fun there. So things were going well. Then Marvel came along, which was very interesting also. I'll go into that a little deeper in a minute. Keep in mind, this is my adulthood. I've got this inheritance, this gift from God, and basically I'm using it to make a lot of money. I had a very deep catalog, a lot of software. I did not write all these. I branched out into publishing. I was publishing other people's works and giving them royalties and making money off of it. Marvel came along and actually approached us to see if we would write games for them. At the time, the license was for their entire catalog. The first time ever that Marvel had licensed their work to be used in the personal home computer market. They said they heard about personal computers. The guy I was talking to said either his son or grandson told him about it, and they wanted to get into this market. And they had talked around, and everybody said that they should come talk to us. Okay, which was nice. So that came out. So everything's going big guns. It's going wonderful. Things couldn't get any better. Because of Marvel, I'm sorry, am I not clear? Better? Okay. Because of Marvel, I was in Manhattan one weekend. I would go up there frequently to talk with them, get approval on things. And as I was leaving that day to go back to my hotel room, the receptionist says, Scott, do you know Harlan Ellefson, right? And I'm going, well, yeah. I mean, the name I knew. I didn't personally know him. She said, oh, good. Then you'd like to go to his birthday party, I'm sure. Yeah, that sounds good. So I got invited to Harlan. They're having a surprise birthday party for Harlan Ellison. It was his 50th birthday party. I guess he was in Manhattan. I don't know if people here know about him, who he was, but he has quite the illustrious history in Hollywood. So he was the one who helped science fiction and Hollywood come together. So this was his party, and I got to speak to him at the party for about 2.5 seconds. Anyone ever see the movie Brazil? A few have. Okay, there's a scene in there that is really interesting where you have this self-important guy walking along and talking, being followed by a mob of people. Well, Harlan was sort of like that. He was a dynamo. He did not stand still, and there were constantly people following him around, just talking. And I was not very outgoing. I did not go up and really talk with him or really get to know him. But also at the party was George Takei. I got to speak with George for a while, which was really interesting. Many of you will remember him from Star Trek, and I certainly did. I grew up with watching his movies. The first thing I noticed when I got to talk to him and see him eye to eye, his face is so much bigger. I had been used to seeing him on this little tiny TV screen, that seeing him in person is like, wow, you're so big. It was really strange. It made me think, why did this feel like that? Another person I got to meet was a childhood hero of mine, Isaac Asimov. Well-known figure in science fiction for the day. At one point, he was what was known as the Big Three, the three biggest science fiction authors alive at the time. And he came to the party. I actually did get time to speak with him. I enjoyed it. Tremendous individual. And fascinating to talk to him. His wife was there, also talked with her. And something happened that really made me think. The next day, after the party, I was touching base at there was a sort of a Comic-Con going on close by to Marvel, and there was some dealers there that had Adventure International product that they were selling, and so I was there to touch base with them. As I was leaving, it was a large room, say 3 times bigger than the room we're in here right now, and I'm standing off here, and then off in the distance you could see the main entrance doors. They were set up high, they're elevated, and there'd be stairs that walked down into it. Picture like a ballroom. This may have been a ballroom inside the hotel where this was going on. So I just happened to glance over, and I saw walking through the door Isaac Asimov. I thought, wow, he's come to see the show, the vendors and everything, and talk with them. This is kind of neat. I didn't know he had such an interest. But he didn't. He did something very strange. He walked in up on the top level. He didn't walk down the stairs. Then he stopped. He stood there, crossed his arms, and then just stood there. Okay, what's he doing? And suddenly I realized it. Because somebody walked by him, going out the door, turned around, did a double take, and went, wow, it's Isaac Asimov! And ran over and started pumping his hand. This generated a buzz on the floor. People looked up and went, wow, it's Isaac Asimov! And suddenly he's surrounded. And I watched his face come alive. He just suddenly started glowing. He was there for fan adoration. And at this time, I was going through the same thing. Because I would go to shows, I would go to places, and I would just soak in fan adoration. And I was thinking, looking at it from a distance, that's kind of shallow. It really got me thinking.
Oops.
Oopsie daisy. This was the crash in the early home computer industry. By this time, my games were out on Commodore, Texas Instruments. I had them being made for a machine out in Japan. They were in Italy, UK. They're all literally around the world. But the industry got bloated. There was everybody. It was sort of like the dot-com bubble. Everybody wanted to get into it, and because of it, there was just too much stuff going on. Adventure International, unfortunately, was self-funded. We did not have deep pockets. We had no angel investors. And everything we made in the company, we poured into the company. And we could not ride this out. The TI 99.4 came out. I had a cartridge coming out on that. That was another world's first. I wrote a game specifically for their machine. It was the first text full graphic adventure game for a cartridge. Really had high hopes for it. They actually did publish the ones that they made for the first run. The machine, this was a $1,000 machine Texas Instruments was selling in the home computer market. They started the crash by saying, okay, we're getting out of the market. They were selling machines for $50. And it was a domino effect. Whoa. Whoa is me. Washed out. I went through a divorce. I went through bankruptcy. It was over. I was a failure. You have no idea. Keep in mind this, going from this, feeling yourself up on a pedestal to waking up in the toilet, literally. I felt empty. I was really bleak. It was really dark. And literally, God talked to me. And he talked to me in a way that I needed to be talked to. Keep in mind, I was an atheist at this point. There was a weekend camp going on, and it was a Christian camp, and that's fine. I was not adverse to that, but I just felt like I needed to get away. So I asked the person going, would it be all right if I tagged along? You said you wanted to take the kids. I grew up in camp as a kid. I was a nature counselor up in Ocala. I used to wrestle alligators. Literally, we had permission from the state to go out, capture the alligators out of the lake. We had an alligator pit. I showed the kids the alligators. I loved horseback riding. I missed all that. And I thought, I need to get away from it all. Maybe I can just go hang out in this place where there's nature. And the person said, well, yeah, there's group dorm there. You can come up. But keep in mind, this is a Christian camp. And I said, well, I don't have to go to anything, right? No, you don't have to go to anything. Okay, fine. So I went. I went up to the camp, and that night I heard they were having a service off in the chapel, and okay, well, I'm not going to that. And then I heard, well, the person speaking is Jewish, and they were from the concentration camps. They went through it. They had a tattoo on the arm and everything. And I heard that, and I thought, wow, I'd kind of like to hear their story. And so I went. I don't remember the lady's name, sadly. But basically, she told her story of coming out of Nazi Germany, of going through the concentration camp, and her conversion to Christianity. And I listened to it, and I went, what? Why would somebody in their right mind want to become a Christian? Literally, that's what I thought. I really didn't have any good thoughts of Christians at this time, of everything that I absorbed on the side, never really looking into it myself. Okay, so I came back from the camp and I'm thinking, this is interesting. What is this Christian stuff all about? And they talked about at the camp how you could actually talk to God. And I thought, well, that's weird. I thought you needed somebody to talk to God for you, but okay. So I decided I was going to buy a Christian Bible, first one ever. And I went into a bookstore, Christian bookstore. Okay, I'd seen these in the mall, walked by it. I figured, okay, I'll go in and buy a Christian Bible. So I went in and I said, I'd like to buy a Christian Bible. And they said, sure, which one do you want? Well, just the Christian one. Yeah, never mind, come over here. And he took me over to the wall of Bibles. And I went, whoa. I said, well, and he said, well, what are you looking for? I said, well, something just small, and I sort of want to see what this Jesus fellow had to say. Okay, then what you want's a red letter edition. Oh, what does that mean? Well, Jesus' words are in red. Okay, that makes sense. And I spied a small paperback version. I said, what about that one? He says, is that red letter? He says, yes, it is. So I took it. It turned out it's what was known as NIV translation, small pocket Bible, words of Jesus in red. So I took it home. I said, okay, God, they said that we could talk. So let's consider this a prayer, God. I'm talking to you. Tell you what, I'm going to start reading what Jesus said. And if there's anything about this that's real, you talk to me and prove it. So I just opened the book at random, found the New Testament, which I had never read, opened it, and started reading. Oh, there's a red section. Started reading it. And what did I read? I read the Lord's Prayer. I knew the Lord's Prayer. Jesus wrote this? How did I know the Lord's Prayer? Later, I realized why I knew the Lord's Prayer. I grew up in Florida before the Supreme Court outlawed prayers in school. And I think in 2nd or 3rd grade, I had a teacher that would open every day by reading the Lord's Prayer. So it was something I knew about Jesus. Wow, blew me away. Shut the book. Oh, okay. That was really weird. Okay. Closed it, put it away. Okay, we're not doing that again. Next day it's like, okay. That was coincidence. I understand coincidences. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to read again. God, you there? I want you to prove to me you're there. That was coincidence yesterday. So I'm going to open it. I'm going to skip over this little spot where I already read. I'm going to flip around. Okay, I'm going to start reading in red, and it's the Lord's Prayer again. I dropped the book, went away from it. I asked some people, I said, this Lord's Prayer thing, it's all over the New Testament, isn't it? No, I think it's only 2 places. Are you sure about that? Yeah, let's look it up. You can look it up? Oh yeah, there's a way to look it up. It's called a concordance, and I can find it for you. Yeah, here they are, 2 places. And I realized God had been talking to me. And that's personally when I converted and accepted Jesus. So God talked to me, and this following slide is what he was trying to say. There's a bigger picture. And it ain't over yet. Middle age came along. I was working after the company collapsed. I was working locally for a small insurance firm. Worked for them for, I don't really remember, it might have been a year. Basically went into contract work with them and then got laid off. So I was out of work, and I figured, okay, I should have no problem finding a job, and I sent out resumes. And I sent out resumes. And I sent out resumes. And what I kept getting back was overqualified, overqualified, overqualified. After running a multi-million-dollar company and doing all this stuff, nobody wanted to hire me. I know it sounds strange, but that was what the reality was. I was at the bottom, literally at the dregs. So, what happened next? Roxanne said, you know, we really haven't prayed about this. Roxanne's my wife. I said, you know, you're right, we haven't. So we got down on our knees and we had a heartfelt prayer. And I was asking God, what do you want me to do? I'm dead in the water here. I have no job. The money's all gone. I don't know what to do. We got up from that prayer and literally the phone rang. I went to answer it. Is this Scott Adams? Yes it is. This is John Matthias. John Matthias? Yeah, you remember from Commodore. John Matthias was the fellow in charge of the entire software division at Commodore. He was the one who licensed the games that I did. He was part of the company that helped drive me into the ground, too, because there's a story behind that, but it wasn't his fault. It was more the upper management that did it, because they ended up licensing the entire Marvel catalog I had, that they were going to be the sole distributors, and then they dropped it. They ended up paying some marvelously large penalty fees to both Marvel and Adventure International, but nowhere near made up for what the lost sales and everything was. But that had nothing to do with it. John was a great guy. I knew him from Commodore, and I liked him. I said, yeah, John, this is Scott. What's going on? He says, I've been trying to I'll find you for months. You're a hard guy to find. Okay. But somehow he had gotten my phone number, he had reached somebody, and he got hold. And he said, Scott, I'm starting a company up here in Wisconsin, and I'd like you to come work for me. I could use you. Wow. Great, John. Where's Wisconsin? We moved. We moved to Wisconsin. One of the things I got, when I got to Wisconsin, I found out something very interesting about myself. I hate hot. This was a good place to be if you hate hot. Here's reveal number 2. This is history in t-shirts, by the way. He started a company called Avista, Inside Industry, and I then worked there for the next 30 years. It went through a lot of changes. At one point, there was an employee buyout of John. I was part of the employees that bought him out. I had a tiny share of the company. And the company eventually was bought out by Esterline, which is another large multinational firm. So went from a small entrepreneurship that was eventually bought out. It was a great company to work for. It was a great place to live. We raised 5 kids out there. I was able to live on 40 acres, had horses. I was literally 15 minutes from town. There was 2 traffic lights in the entire town. I went to work at the building that used to be where a cornfield was, and they decided this was going to be the Platteville Industrial Park, and this was the first building there. So it was great. Where else could you have a high-tech job working in a cornfield? Just amazing. So the years passed. The internet came online, sort of like Skynet. It came live. And suddenly, I'm getting fan mail. In the early days, the first fan mail I was getting was coming in, and I got an email from a fellow by the name of Scott Adams. Oh, there's another one. Dilbert fame. How many know Dilbert? Okay, I love Dilbert. Well, it seemed like he had for years been getting fan mails for the guy who wrote adventure games. And he's been trying to find me. Funny enough, I had actually been getting fan mail for the guy who wrote Dilbert cartoons. So we decided to exchange fan mails. It was an interesting time. I got a lot of touching emails. I had no idea the number of people whose lives I had touched with my classic games and other things on a very positive note. And I wasn't trying to touch people's hearts. I wasn't trying to touch people's lives. I was trying to get rich, literally. But I think God had other ideas. It was very touching to read these. But still, that was then. This is now. I'm washed up as a game developer. There's really nothing I can do about it. I was working in the mundane field of avionics software. I was enjoying life. We were married. My wife, by the way, is not a gamer. She'd be the first one to tell you. And she'll come up here in a minute and talk. It was though a fun time. And we raised the kids, we had a good time. We spent a lot of time outside, except for a few incidences where I did get sucked into tech, but that's another story. Perhaps for another day. So a new life, remarried. We've been married now 29 years, be 30 next summer. So 29 years later, it's like, okay, maybe I can start developing something. So in 2001, I think it was, I started developing the game Inheritance, or it was around 2000. I was writing in Visual Basic 6, which is quite an old platform now, but for then it was cutting edge. And that was the dawn of the PC era. Early PCs back then, remember the monochrome screens? And so I started writing it. It literally took me 10 years to get the game done because I didn't work on it full time. I did a little bit here, a little bit there. I'd go years without even thinking about it. And then I'd do a little spurt more. And finally got it done. It was in the Visual Basic world, so this is literally what it would look like. Not very appetizing. It was PC only. Sort of like the old TRS-80 games. So, I got tired of working on it. I set myself an arbitrary date. I'm going to release this on Valentine's Day 2013. Whether it's done or not, I'm releasing it. It's going to be done because that's why I say it's going to be done. I really just didn't want to be working on it anymore. I want to be over with. Okay, so in the back, my old packaging. There's a self-packaging that I came up with here. You can see it standing there, just sitting there on the limited gold.
Called The Inheritance.
It's called The Inheritance. This is the back of it. You can see a little bit down there in the corner where it says Saga. What I was marketing it under was Scott Adams' Grand Adventures. The game Inheritance is a fun game. I'm hoping that people would enjoy a game that wasn't preachy, wasn't doctrinal, but it would at least get people to read their Bible, because there are some requirements that you actually read a Bible to understand some of the puzzles. So I wanted to try to connect people with God. So I sort of felt like, okay, I'm doing this for God. But I knew how to market things, because I ran Adventure International, and I knew how to do this, and I am going to do this the way I did it before, and I am going to make millions, and I am going to get this right. And I released it. Our sales were weak. Failure. And then God talked to Roxanne, who talked to me. There was too much I and not enough him. If supposedly I'm doing this for him, why is it all about Scott Adams? In 2016, this was springish, I got an email from a group called CGDC, Christian Game Developers Conference, and they asked me to come out. Would I be interested in coming out and speaking there? No. I don't want to leave. I don't want to go anywhere. I mentioned it to Roxanne, and she said, "Oh, of course you shouldn't go." No, she said, "You should go." Yeah. Okay, she mentioned it to our oldest daughter, what was going on. Oldest daughter told her, "Oh, Dad had better go to that." She came back and said, she said you should go also. Okay, I'll go. 2016. So I went to CGDC. And I talked about the inheritance, and I talked about my failure there. And basically it was very similar to this talk now up to this point. And one of the things I realized that I had done wrong and I needed to redo was I needed to get myself out of the picture and let God lead. It was an amazing conference. I made some incredible friends, talked to some incredible people. I went again this year, talked to some incredible people. I got to meet Rand Miller of Myst. That was a highlight this year. And I was a big fan of Myst. Anybody here play Myst? Okay. So you all know how much fun it was. And I really look forward to speaking with him. And the amazing thing I found out was he had played my games, and he also had enjoyed them. I have no idea the people I had touched, so it was really neat. But anyway, this is in 2016. One of the things I'm doing was, at this conference, I said, okay, I need to repackage this. I need to understand going forward. So I met with Roxanne and Phil Conrad, who runs Bible Byte Books and Kids Books. He's an incredible individual who has a publishing firm that teaches kids how to program by writing games. He writes both a secular version and a Christian-orientated version. I highly respect him. Turned out he was a fan of my games. I'm finding these people. So he was willing to sit with me, and we decided, I said, I've got to figure out what the first step is. I've got to figure out the name of the company. It can't be Saga anymore. I know that now. So we sat there and we started brainstorming all different words and acronyms and all sorts of weird things. And literally 20 minutes in, it's like I went, guys, we're doing this wrong. we need to pray first. We haven't prayed. So we prayed. And then Roxanne, by the way, she has gotten the name Wise Counselor from somebody else who knows her, and she really is. She says, you know, in the past when you wanted to find things, you'd look in the Bible. And I went, oh yeah, that's right. So her and Phil are still playing with names, playing with acronyms. I have the Bible on my smartphone on an app. I opened it and I literally just started flipping pages from wherever it was without even looking. And then I stopped. And then I read, Jesus was on the cross with Mary and Mary of Clopas and Mary of what? Clopas? Clopas. One of the things, we had agreed when we were starting this session what we were looking for. The name had to be 5 or 6 letters. It had to be short. We didn't want to be American Standard Oil. We wanted to be AMCO. We didn't want to be Kentucky Fried Chicken. We wanted to be KFC. We needed a name that was short. We needed a name that was easy to pronounce. It couldn't be Glovesabit. You had to be able to read it and know what it said. We needed a name that wasn't polluted on the internet. You type in this name, you shouldn't go to a porn site. It shouldn't be ladies' lingerie. It shouldn't have bad connotations. That's a tough one. So I said, hey guys, you ever hear the word Clopas? No. So I went ahead and I looked it up. This is the folks that were at CGDC in 2016. A large number. Here it is, Clopas, C-L-O-P-A-S. 6 letters. Internet not used at all. My teleprompter is reminding me. Time-wise, oops, I'm running. I'm going to have to speed up here. Okay, so Clopas is not used. The Clopas.com was taken. Anything with 6 letters .com is taken. Somebody has sat on it. But Clopas.net was available. And then I did a little further research on what does Clopas mean? Is there any bad meaning about it? Does anyone have any bad connotations? It's used only one place in the entire Bible. And it was that verse that I turned to. That's the only place. It has a mystical meaning, I found. It means glory to the Father. So it was like, wow, I'm getting goosebumps over this. It's like God reserved this name for him. So Clopas, this is where Clopas was born. The logo itself that you see there is a game in itself for people to figure out. I give no clues or why it's a game or what it means. I've had a handful of people figure it out and come and tell me. And then we came up with a slogan, which you can see up there. So this was the foundation. This was the beginning of Clopas. So this is where Clopas was born. The inheritance then, I needed to rewrite it. One of the things I learned there at the conference was Unity was really a great way to go. It's a C# based platform. You write once, you run on many platforms. I needed to get the game out. PC is good, but mobile's better. The kids really like the phones, the tablets, and so forth, so I could do this one time. Keep in mind at this point, my engine's in Visual Basic 6. So I came back. I'm still working at Avista at this time. It's changed hands. It has different names, but still the same company. And I came back, and in my spare time, I started working on getting the engine over into Unity. I got it. It's now 2017. I come back to this summer, going back to the CGDC. I figure, okay, I'll get some of these nice folks to play test it. I'll get some feeling if I'm going in the right direction. No one wants to play the game.
So I have different gifts. My name's Roxanne, and my gifts are totally different than his. So I'm his encourager. I'm the one that sees a vision. I'm the one that helps to encourage him along to get things done. And so we've got all this stuff going on at the conference, and he's sitting at the table moping. And I'm like, what's going on, dear? He goes, well, nobody wants to play the game. I said, well, have you invited anybody? Do they know what's going on here for them to play the game? No. I said, okay, I'm an outgoing person. I'm the one that likes to meet people and go places and do things and horseback ride and garden and adventure. The real adventure, not on a computer. Mine are the other adventures. So I said, oh, don't worry. So within 10 minutes, I went around and got like 20 people. They signed up, they started playing the game, filling out the surveys, getting everything, playing. We had these kids, and he wasn't aware of this, that kids had started doing it vocally on their phones, playing the game. And he didn't understand that was a capability too, and just opened up a whole new world to him, because he's thinking back this way when there is really this whole other world out there. So he starts, within hours, he's got surveys. People, how they want to play the game, what they thought. They really liked it, they want to play longer. Some played from 10 minutes to an hour and a half, just this little alpha testing time through that. And that was like the beginning, but he kept focusing on the inheritance. But I had a feeling, and I had an impression, like I do, that there was something that was going to take, and the inheritance would be number 2.
Okay, so it looks like the inheritance, I had a better route forward. I had something that was going to be more consumer friendly. I redid a lot of stuff in the game that were frustrations. I was finally listening to the people that were playing instead of doing it my way. And in the past, when I would write a game, it was very important that I listened to my beta testers and incorporate what I saw happening. I didn't do that with inheritance properly. So this is great, but I'm yesterday's news, okay? I don't have a foot in the market. I've been out of the industry for 30 years. How am I going to reach new audiences? What's going to happen? Before I explain that, I want to throw out something else here. Tandy Assembly, 2017. This was a place I talked to a couple of months ago in Chillicothe, Ohio, the first annual, and I put a plug for them. Really great bunch of people. Went out there, and it is based on the old TRS-80. There's people are interested in the old computers. What? We had one guy at the conference literally flew from Australia to be at this conference. That's crazy. No one here flew long distances, right? Oh, hi, Paul. Paul, can you stand up for a minute? Where are you from, Paul?
I'm not here in the UK. So, your gate touched me, and that's why I called it.
So God says, okay, what if we can open a different door here for you instead of inheritance? Are you willing to go through it? Can you read that? Escape the Gloomer, an epic tale of Redwall, a new adventure game from Scott Adams set in the epic world of Redwall, classic text adventures with modern updates like speech-to-text options, gorgeous hand-painted artwork, rich atmospheric music, professional voice acting. The best of 80s adventure takes plus the best 80s... Tales, there we go. The best of 80 adventure tales plus the best 80s adventure game creator. So this is the official announcement that I am doing a Redwall game called Escape the Gloomer. The prologue has already been written and is been doing beta testing, and I've gotten a lot of ideas for Chapter 1 at this conference, and I'll be continuing writing it. The tentative release date is going to be fall next year. This will not be released unless it's ready. So, and this is now taking the brunt of my time. The Inheritance is on the back burner until this is done, and done properly. And then the plan is to go forward with the Inheritance. The company I'm working with is Soma Games out of Portland, Oregon. And you can see the logos down there in the corner. So, moving forward, what is the future of Clopas, future games? Redwall is going to be first. Inheritance being redone is on the back burner. I'm going to be continuing as God leads. I want my games to be family fun. Even though that looked kind of eerie and so forth on the Escape the Gloomer, it's going to be a fun game. And I'm not killing off players anymore. Any of you that played my classic games have many times seen the words, game over, you died, game over. That won't be occurring. Educational, cognitive development. And so for my final reveal, if you can't see the t-shirt, this is what it is.
Oh, wow.
I've got one more. The closing, the true inheritance to God's story. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. This is my inheritance and my story as well, to follow where he leads. He led me here today. What an amazing journey this is turning out to be.
Wow, this is good.
I've met people that were an actor, a significant actor, and once that part ended, they were typecast and they couldn't be an actor in another area. Being so well known in the adventure area, did it ever inhibit you, or did you ever have any resistance for you to do other things? Oh, you can't do that in the adventure area. Did it ever work against you?
Good question. His question was, he has known actors that were typecast by a part. Once the part was over, they couldn't get work doing something different. Did that ever happen to me? And maybe not deliberately, but it certainly seems to have molded me. When I walked away from the gaming industry and went into mundane programming, it certainly didn't affect me then. Though every once in a while, the company I worked for would take me out of the closet, shake the dust off of me, and say, this is the guy who wrote Adventures. And the client or whoever it was would say, oh, well, that's cool. And they'd put me back in the closet and let me go back to coding. Today, as you see, I'm still doing text adventure games. And I think it's a gift that God's given me, and I believe everybody here has been given a gift by God. If you find it and use it, it's great. None of us are any better than anyone else. None of us are special. Just find your passion and find your gift.
That's what I'm going to say.
At the CGDC 2016, somebody handed me a book. It was called Wild at Heart. We were traveling, so we had a lot of time to read in the car. So I was reading that book to him, and that's where his passion, what he really wanted to do, was unleashed through that book. And that's when he decided to retire, start doing this. And but that's what really motivated him. That's what really motivated him, is to find out what is it that you love to do. What is your heart telling you to do? And that's what was the springboard.
Very good point. And the book is Wild at Heart by John Eldridge. Highly recommended. It's written for men. Women can read it, but guys, you gotta read it. This is important. This is amazing. Anyone else? Yes, Paul.
Hello, Scott. First of all, that was a very touching and moving talk, so thank you very much for sharing that. I'm interested that in that, your presentation, you used the word failure several times in your career, and I realised that because back then you saw failure as financial failure. I'd like to reassure you that anyone who's played your games, you've managed to touch so many lives. I really don't think you should use the word failure on that at all. But I have got a question, Scott. A lot of the work you did was before you found God. So a lot of the work that we've known and loved is before you found God. I wonder if you ever look back on it with a kind of mixed feelings, because you produced all that work when you were kind of a different person. I wonder, tell us about that.
Okay, thank you, Paul. As a Christian today, certain entertainments attract me, others do not, for various reasons. There is a contemporary Christian song called Dear Younger Me. I look back at the decisions you made, and those decisions basically made me. I wish you would have made better decisions then, but I appreciate being me now. So I don't have regrets for what I have done. I would certainly have done things differently then, knowing what I know now, but I didn't. So I figure I'm on a journey. I'm in an adventure game myself that God has set me on, and I need to find out. He is the author of the story. I need to find out what my role is. So thank you, Paul. That was a tremendous question. And I'm going to turn this over to Walter now. I think he wants to say something.
Work? Okay, good, thank you. So we are honored to be here, Billy Mitchell and myself. We're really here on behalf of we'd like to say we're here on behalf of the global gaming culture. And we're here to honor you for all your amazing contributions to the global gaming culture. Because my eyes can't read small print anymore, but essentially it's believed that you were one of the earliest, if not the first, to make an adventure style that would be on one of the early gaming systems. That would be, like before, it predates DOS, doesn't it? And so we're presenting Scott with his own trading card. We have copies of this. And Billy wants to say something. Shall I hand these out?
By the way, I've already handed those out.
Okay, everybody got one?
What I think is truly awesome, and he doesn't always, people like him, pioneers, people who make things happen, don't always give themselves credit. Not only would he be considered a pioneer, someone who was the first in order to create something such as the adventure games, as the years went on, he would be too modest to tell you the people who followed behind him, that tried to duplicate him, who tried to one-up him, found it difficult, and basically too difficult. At different points in time, you would come across one of those people who was honest enough to say, we're not going to be able to do that, because Scott Adams already did it. And so it should give you, he's talking about God, a little cynicism here. It should give you a little satisfaction that people try to outdo you, and they can't. It's okay to be a little selfish and have a little cynicism. Because, again, things began with you. It's a legacy. The reason why we recognize these things is we want it in history. We want the world to know, and for it never to be lost, where things began and as they evolved. Someday, 100 years from now, things will be on a level that we can't even understand. And the fact of the matter is, it's important that people know where it began. It began here. It'll never be lost to history. Someday, you won't be around. 3 or 4 generations away, people will reflect back on this and say, yes, my great-granddad did that.
Wow.
And I think it's important because how many people here can name something that their ancestors did, that they're responsible for, that's a part of culture? He'll have that. Otherwise, when it left the memory of the last person, he would be lost to history. He'll never be lost now, ever. And that's a great thing.